Hey, I'm Kim.
And I'm Pancho, and you're listening to Now That You See It, a show that will ruin you for boring conversations forever.
It's about the invisible stuff that shapes how we think and connect those, oh, wait, what? Moments that change how you perceive the world around you.
Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Hey,
Good
Kim,
evening,
how's it going?
friend. How are you?
It's good. Yeah, yeah, good to see you. I'm doing well.
Yeah. All right. Well, welcome
hmm
to Now That You See It.
Yeah,
Pancho, you have a big week coming up.
I do.
Tell
I
us what's
do.
going on.
Yeah, yeah, I'm getting married on Saturday. Today is Wednesday, so I am -3 days from being married. And
T minus three.
T-3. Yeah, it's exciting. Everything, a lot of people, the question we keep getting is, are you freaking out? Are you excited? How are you feeling? And we're doing okay. We're relatively calm and composed. Steph is a planner, and we started planning this 6 months ago and got a lot of the work done a long time ago. So now it's just executing on the plan that's already in motion. So that feels really good.
Any
Um,
any tips for the non-planners out there? How to plan a wedding if you're a non-planner?
yeah, like me.
Marry Steph.
Marry Steph. Marry somebody. I'm on the side of the spectrum where I don't worry much. I don't carry a lot of anxiety in my day to day, and that can that can express itself to a fault in the way that I live my life. And Steph is on the other end of what I would imagine is the median for most people. So she is more of a planner. She is more of a worrier. And in our case, it works out. I help bring her back down and, allow her um, the opportunity to relax and have fun with me and kind of meet me on that level. And there are moments where we really need to get our shit together and start planning or start worrying about something. Otherwise, it's going to be a headache later. And that's where she steps in and really helps us, you know, get stuff done. So I'm not sure if I have any other any other tips from my lived experience on how to have a relatively hassle-free week leading up to your wedding, other than the way it worked out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah.
Well, before we get into the Now That You See It topic of the day, which I'm very excited about, I get to interview
hmm
you on Yeslighting, sharing a couple of updates. We've got fun facts and life updates.
Yeah,
You've got
yeah.
your wedding. I've got almost as exciting as a parent of 9-year-olds is back to school is coming up.
Yeah,
I made it. I made it through the summer.
yeah.
And
Oh
it was
man.
a truly like it was a really wonderful summer and our best yet. But just if there are any parents out there, well, and also you're on the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast. All you West Coast people, you're already starting school and
hmm
recording this in the middle to late of August. I've got to wait till after Labor Day. But I think West Coasters in the mountains, they're all starting. But yes, there's something very special. You know, that old Staples commercial of, when they would play, it's the most wonderful time of the year as the parents would do back to school shopping with their kids.
hmm
Um, both we had a lovely summer of just like fun, sun, sand, camps. Uh, just frankly, we didn't even like sunblock was a thing for June, and then by July, and my poor children, my poor pale children.
First sunblock, then sunburns. You get a little bit of both.
Oh my God. Yeah, they're hardcore farmer tanned, foreign with the this is gonna be like permanent now. But they are
Yeah.
going back to school and summer work is not quite done, but it's happening. We're doing it.
Great.
More weeks. Yeah.
What is exciting to you about back to school?
I am living vicarious, as many parents do, living vicarious through children, my children. And yes, as a parent, I'm excited to like have my sort of like routine and structure back.
hmm
Although we had a fair amount with camp, but yeah, that's like I was into the looseness of summer as a break from the routine of school. And now I'm craving the routine of school as a break from the looseness of summer. And as a kid, I loved back to school. And so every end of August, like I am reminded, like bodily in these times of like, oh my God, I get to use new pencils and pens and clean notebooks and crack open fresh spines of hardcover books. And like, I went to Catholic school, so I had to cover every single one of my textbooks in paper bag. So like, do you know about this? Catholic schools, they would
I did the same thing.
make
Yeah,
you
you
wrap
take
it.
a grocery paper bag and you use it to wrap the textbooks to protect the covers.
And then I would wrap that in contact paper. I had a
Oh.
time. I know. Because I was hard on my books. So I love this. I love this time of year because it reminds me of my own back to school. Like, I'm a huge nerd. So I was like, I'm so ready to read the books and do the things and practice my handwriting and blah. And I love my friends. And so I generally have a positive view of this, like bodily and somatically, and emotionally. And my kids. So that's joyful. However, the last 2 weeks. So we're going to talk a little bit about fun facts. Both of my kids have ADHD. And as far as I know, I don't. And so I spend a lot of time sort of like teaching myself about their brains so I can effectively like support and parent them. But one of the things that we're dealing with right now is how to motivate kids who have ADHD to work on long-term projects such as summer work. And yet here we are in the last like 10 days of summer. Oh boy, it's not done. So I'm trying to figure out how to scaffold that so I'm not, like basically doing their work for them or just over directing and using some tools and tricks.
Yeah.
So maybe next time we record, I'll let you know how this grand experiment goes.
Yeah. I mean, maybe next time we record, you can impart on me the wisdom you have about your children that I can apply to myself about why it's so hard to get work done that I don't want to get done, because apparently it's not that way for everybody. But if I don't want to do it, it is a Herculean effort to get myself to do something I don't want to do. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, do you mind if I jump into my fun, like things that sort of, speaking of the title of our podcast, now that you see it, once I learn it, I can't unlearn it and it changes how I see things. Mm-hmm. So in just like learning about them, there's these, have you heard of the default mode network in your brain? The sort of the network that is just constantly worrying in the background. And then very separate from that, there's the task network of the parts of your brain that get going when you have to do a task. For people with ADHD, those networks behave very differently relative to each other than those who don't. And for generally in the population that doesn't have ADHD, they take turns going on and off. So you're either sort of mind wandering or you're doing a task. And because of how a brain with ADHD sort of interacts with dopamine and uses dopamine in a different way, those networks are often on at the same time. So you're tasking while you're mind wandering, while you're mind wandering.
Yeah.
And it's just right. And so that's a really familiar experience for you. And I can tell that it's also familiar. I mean, there's so much around like, how do you get 2 9-year-olds to finish their summer work? There's so much more to it, but it opened my mind to like what it must be like to be in their brains of like trying to just fill in these worksheets of math problems or like write a 1-page summary of this book that they read over the summer. Speaking of Herculean, what a Herculean effort it is when your brain is doing this mind wandering and tasking at the same time, which is like a different feeling than I have. And so just, it gives me a ton of empathy for like, oh boy, they're working hard to get this basic stuff done that I think is like, come on, here we are. What's been your experience?
Yeah.
Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, no, I mean, that checks out for me. I'll be doing something. I'll be writing a blog article, or I'll be reading an email, and there's something in the context of doing that task that reminds me of another thing I have to do. And the next thing I know, I've abandoned doing the thing I was doing to start working on the other thing that I remembered I had to do. And I have to bring myself back. And so I've had to develop systems to help me acknowledge that secondary to do that comes up because my mind is wandering even as I'm concentrating, and set it down. So Asana, a task management tool, is a great way to do that. Or if I'm not at a computer, I carry a little moleskin, uh, just like a pocket-sized notebook that I can quickly pull out and write stuff down. And that just allows my brain to think, okay, I've now done something about it.
Yeah.
I can set it aside and move back to whatever it is I am supposed to, or at least I'm intending to be focused on right now. So yeah, as a
Yeah.
kid, I don't
Super
know how you
hard,
do
right?
that. Yeah, executive functioning is not a thing for children. So at least not in the way that it is for somebody with a fully developed prefrontal cortex. So yeah,
Yeah.
just so
No,
much
we're
harder.
doing a lot of
Yeah.
external positive rewards. Like it's scaffolded with external rewards, which like
Yeah.
I don't know, as like we've been told, and this is like my hobby horse right now is, man, raising these children has opened my eyes to how neurotypically focused the world is,
Sure.
and just structured. But like, how many times have we been told you have to motivate kids with intrinsic motivation? It should come from inside. Like, don't give them stars, stickers, and money to do something basic. And like, that is just not. That's not how my children work. And when we have done that, when we've done the external reward system, things go well. And
Yeah.
things go well after a couple rounds of like, da 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 da, you reward them, and then they sort of like internalize the behavior that it feels good, and then you can
Yeah.
pull away. So
Yeah.
a little bit of external rewards can go a long way.
I could see that in my life. The intrinsic reward of essentially doing the things I know I should get done is there, but it is not initially the thing that gets me to do those things. Once I'm in the habit of doing those things on a regular basis, and I built that as just kind of, this is what I do in my day-to-day life, then it is really intrinsically rewarding. But I don't do it because it's intrinsically rewarding. I do it because it's habitual. And I do it
Yes.
because it's habitual, because that habit was externally reinforced in some way to get it going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. I reread, and then I want to flip it to you, but my last just
Sure.
like man, fun fact about this topic is I reread one of my favorite books, Essentialism, by Greg McKeown.
Mhm.
That I read it when I read it probably, I don't know, 6-7 years ago, and I was like, oh my God, this is my life. Like this is my Bible. I need to follow this. Everything this man says, I need to do this. I reread it, and I've reread it often, but I reread it last week, and I was like, this makes no sense for people who struggle with executive functioning. Like this book is good for like half the population, maybe. It was amazing to rewatch it and be like, buddy, no one is going to be able to do this if they have any challenges with attention, focus, executive functioning, or just like time management, task tracking, super common experiences for people with ADHD. Like this is a very neurotypical system. Yeah. Not mentioned, but like very much.
There are some scenarios in my experience where applying his suggestions does work.
Mm-hmm.
For example, when I'm driving, I cannot afford to. So one of the things I remember he brings to the table is, in the first hour of your day, close yourself off from external influence, external information. So take that as your time to just be with yourself, your thoughts, space, silence,
Yeah,
etc.
I did love that.
And that was very difficult for me to do until I had a job where I had to commute for half an hour to where I worked. And then I made it a habit to listen to music instead of listening to podcasts on my morning commute, and then listen to podcasts on my afternoon commute. And I got the benefit of not having other people's thoughts, ideas, voices in the beginning of my day. But because mechanically I had controlled my environment, or my environment was necessarily controlled as me being in a car with nothing else to do other than drive and listen to music. So in my day-to-day life, that's not going to happen, or at least it's very difficult for me to do. But there are ways to manage your environment so that as a person who has ADHD, at least a person with my kind of ADHD, it's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
You have anything going on that you want to share in terms of like facts you learned that have changed how you see things?
Yeah. I was listening to a podcast earlier today about speciation, which is the phenomena in the world where we live in a world with separate, distinct species of living beings. And what Darwin identified in his theory of evolution is that he essentially identified natural selection as a something that happens resulting from traits that are adaptive. So if an animal has a trait that gives it an advantage to survive, the theory goes, and I think the theory holds some water, that those animals are the ones that are more likely to, over the course of millions of years, pass their genes down. And so you end up with species. What isn't quite as clear is why it is that we end up with species instead of this blended spectrum of different kinds of animals. So, for example, let's say you've got some bird that over the course of millions of years has handed down its genes and the species looks a certain way. Why is it that there aren't other animals that are very similar to it that have more in common with their ancestors than this newer, updated version of the animal does? Or thinking about, the difference between a wolf and a coyote. There's a distinct difference between a wolf and a coyote, and they cannot breed to produce offspring. Why is it that there is not just a spectrum of animals out in the world on which one side you have what we would think of as a wolf and on the other you have what we think of as a coyote, but there's all sorts of different things in between, like in the way that you have a very light blue and a very dark blue, and you have all of these other shades of blue in between, right? Species don't do that. You just have the light blue and the dark blue and a gap between the two. So it's the fact that there are species in the world is just something I'd always taken for granted. And
yeah, totally.
There is theoretically a world in which it could not have turned out that way. And we could have ended up with that spectrum of different kinds of animals. So it's a really abstract thought, and I don't know that it has much practical value, but it did allow me to change how I think about the distinct species of animals around me. And it's one more thing that I don't know why it turned out that way in the world. But to me, it's fascinating to think about that.
It's fascinating because it's just one more thing of a sign of like, we are in a system right now that is the consequence of some seed at the beginning that went off, and we got to this point right now, but we could have gotten to a gabillion other points depending on each little decision along the way. Oh yeah. No, I mean, like, this is one of my, like, I don't know, ways I like to, without drugs, trip out is by thinking about time and space on the order of the universe, or like geological time. And like really how big is space? Like that conversation will just that'll send me to the floor. That'll send me to the floor. And this is the other one of how sort of randomly designed this whole experience we're living in right now actually is, as opposed to this is the way this is like the preordained nature. This is just where we happen to land. This is just sort of a random collection of like causes and conditions. And here we are.
Yeah.
Anyway. And I, for another podcast, also have a perpetual, unshaking belief in the friendliness of the universe. And that we are going someplace. but also from just a science perspective. I know
Yeah.
enough math to know like there's a lot of randomness at play and chance. So
Awesome. I love that.
speaking of your beautiful, open, curious mind, I have some questions for you about our topic today. You're bringing to us a very curious and interesting um, topic that I think you've talked about and posted about on your website, Yeslighting, which for anybody who's been in the therapy-osphere and has heard of gaslighting, I'd love to just hear a little bit about like what can we put aside that what is this topic versus gaslighting? Where does it come from? But the first question I want to ask you is, we're going to talk about Yeslighting today, and we're talking in the context of what might be formally called or otherwise called idiot compassion. But before you tell us what this is, can you tell us why? Why was this interesting to you? What sparked your curiosity about it? And what has changed for you since you started learning about it?
Yeah. What sparked my curiosity and what has changed for me since I started learning about it? My curiosity on this got sparked listening to a Huberman podcast, actually. And for those who know a thing or two about Huberman, it was a potentially slightly ironically titled episode, something along the lines of how to be a great partner in relationships. The fact that it was on the Huberman podcast is funny, but it was with, as you know, a psychotherapist named Lori Gottlieb, who is absolutely
Wonderful.
an authority on relationships and brings some degree of Eastern philosophy and Eastern thought to relationship paradigms in Western psychology circles. So it wasn't more than maybe 2.5 minutes of conversation about Yeslighting in a 2-hour podcast between the two of them. But I immediately heard them talk about it and I said, I know what that is. I've seen that before in my life and I've not had a word for it. But I know when it's happening and it drives me up the wall. So that's how I got curious about it. And how has it affected or changed my life since I honed in on it and got curious about it? I think I just see it for what it is more easily now, right? When it's happening around me, when somebody is doing it to me, I now have a word for it, and so I recognize it. I don't know that it's something I, at least in recent history, do. So my behavior hasn't much changed, but I love talking about it. I wrote a blog post about it, and I do notice it more frequently now that I have an actual term for it.
There has got to be a beautiful long German word for the brain tickle I get when I find a word that describes an experience that I haven't been able to put to words yet.
Right. Totally.
And it sounds like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your brain just went, bing!
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
I know that.
I know what that is. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so tell us what it is.
Yeah. So to provide some contrast briefly, gaslighting, which is a relatively popular term at this point, is a scenario in which somebody negates your lived experience, negates what is true for you by essentially saying something else is the case, right? So you may have experienced fear in a scenario that for them was not fear-inducing and for you was fear-inducing, and you're trying to share about that experience, and their response is not to validate the fact that you were afraid, but to say, that's not something to be afraid about. I bet you weren't afraid. You were probably just something excited or, unsure or, something along those lines. So that's gaslighting. In certain scenarios, if it happens chronically, it can lead to a lot of internal turmoil for the person who is the subject of gaslighting. Yeslighting is similar. So idiot compassion is similar in that it reinforces something that's not necessarily true, but it does it in a way that and it also does it in a way that is detrimental to the person who's being yeslit, who is, the receiver of idiot compassion. But it's more subtle, and I think it's far more common in our society. So idiot compassion actually has its roots in Buddhism. Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche came up with the term. And the way that Lori Gottlieb described it is you avoid rocking the boat to spare the person's feelings, even though the boat needs rocking, and your compassion ends up being more harmful than your honesty. And so what it could look like, a really common example, is when somebody has a fight with somebody else, right? Let's say your best friend has just had a fight with their boyfriend and comes to you, and they're breaking up, and your best friend is telling you about all the ways that he is terrible and that he, screwed up the relationship in one way or another. And you've seen this same friend go through 4 breakups that have a lot of things in common. And so your options are, hey, Kim, I'm hearing and noticing that the way you are breaking up with this person is similar to the way that you broke up with person ago and 2 people ago and 3 people ago. What do you think is going on that is leading to the same kinds of breakups and fights in your relationship? That is a kind way as a friend of holding up a mirror for your best friend and showing them maybe part of the thing that needs looking at here, maybe part of the cause for this kind of breakup is you are the common denominator. Yeslighting looks like, oh my God, yeah, he's such an asshole. I can't believe he'd say that to you. Wow, I'm so sorry. You don't deserve any of this. Why can't you just find a good man? Why are all, and so instead of giving somebody the truth, even though it's uncomfortable for you to call it out, and even though it may be uncomfortable for them to receive it, you're giving them, you're reinforcing some delusion that they have, or worse yet, you are coming up with something that is a borderline lie that you think would be the nice, comfortable thing to say to them at that point in time. So that's Yeslighting. And what you are doing, in effect, is you're keeping your friend stuck because you're not giving them real world feedback about what is actually happening in their lives from a third person perspective. And you're instead building a narrative that's not grounded in objective reality. And they are taking that from you as a comfortable narrative to pick up and run with, or a comfortable narrative that they came up with that you're now reinforcing, which allows them to continue running with it. But because it's not the truth of what's actually happening, they get stuck in kind of this cycle of making the same mistakes for the same reasons because they're not addressing the actual cause of the mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
What is the difference for you between idiot compassion and, well, actually, let me ask it a different way. There's idiot compassion and gaslighting of just like reinforcing delusions, reinforcing reinforcing patterns of insecurity, or reinforcing blind spots of just like, this isn't kindness. This isn't kindness.
Yeah.
The opposite side of that, though, can be, listen, I am a parent of a 9-year-old girl. I know a lot of Taylor Swift lyrics. One of them that comes up in our world is casually cruel in the name of being honest. So you can go too far and just, hey, I'm just stating facts, just being honest. So there's idiot compassion, and then there's whatever the hell that is, which we don't want to do. How do you distinguish between, like, you don't want to be Yeslighting, but you don't want to be that?
Yeah.
What's the difference between the appropriate response, and what do you need to know to do the opposite of Yeslighting right without dipping into casually cruel in the name of being honest?
Yeah. There are 2 things that are coming to mind. The first one is are you doing it with kindness? Right? Because there is a very callous way to feed somebody the truth about their situation that maybe they are not able to see. And if you do it in this very kind of rough, emotionally unaware or emotionally uncaring way, it's going to land very differently. And the second thing that came to mind, which everyone can check in with themselves about, is, are you doing it with an open heart? What is your intent? Are you giving them that feedback? Is the entire engagement as they come to you with whatever problem you may gaslight them or may not gaslight them about, or yes, light them about? Is it coming from a place of, I really love and care about this person, and I think it would be helpful for them to have someone point out what they may not be seeing for themselves? Or is it coming from a different place? Maybe a place of, you're annoying me, go away. Here's your problem. Go fix it on your own. So, yeah, I'm curious, what are your thoughts? What were you thinking as the question came up for you?
I know you and I both love Joe Hudson, and I think about some of his stuff all the time, but particularly in the VIEW framework, which is vulnerability, impartiality, empathy, and wonder. I have been just awed by the way he can bring impartiality tone to this, to the moments of, well, what's wrong with that? Or I can't even do it. The man's a magician. But there is something really, I don't know, inspiring, and that I'd want to hold on to in terms of asking myself, if I am, when someone is like in a super vulnerable state, they're in their own fight or flight. Like, they're not going to listen to logic or reason or criticism. They're going to reject you. But when they're in a regulated state and their prefrontal cortex is online and they're ready for a conversation, so asking yourself, am I the right person? Am I regulated? Am I pissed off? And it's just, no matter what, it's going to come out shitty. Or am I, do I have a truly impartial take on this? Am I really divorced from the outcomes? Yeah. I just want to offer a mirror, a reflection, which is, as coaches, what we're trained to be able to do. But you're not a coach for your friend necessarily. You're not a coach for your partner. So how are you going to bring that energy of impartiality, of empathy, of like, I see the pain you're in. I imagine you don't want to be in the pain anymore, and then asking for consent. Would it be okay if I shared some perspective with you? So thinking, am I the right person? Am I regulated? Do I have the right words? Do I have consent? Do they have informed consent? And then being able to like, no, yeah, here, like, it doesn't have to be perfect, but like, here's what I'm noticing. Like, it's for you to take. Does this land for you? What's your reaction to it? As opposed to what feels like casually cruel in the name of being honest, is being like, that's on you, babe. Or like, hey, and then just like throwing a criticism out there and being like, just facts and walking away, lighting that match, and then just boom, I'm out. So I feel like, there's a way to do this. It's the right thing to do often. And there's a way to do it without just dipping into like more wounds that don't need to be there. That's what came up for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why, for you, were you going to say something else?
I think two things came to mind. One, it's the simple paradigm of, are you being nice to keep the peace? Because, by spreading and reinforcing lies, that eventually leads to a lot of turmoil, but keeping the peace in the moment, making the interaction comfortable for yourself by just saying what you think the person wants to hear, or what is going to mollify them and get them to shut up so that you can stop talking about this thing that's emotionally uncomfortable for you to sit with? Or are you being kind? Telling the truth is kind, not always nice. No. And then what you're talking about is something else, which isn't being nice or kind. It's, it's being, it almost sounds like giving in to maybe emotions of annoyance or frustration, or emotions of this isn't my problem and I don't want to deal with it. But instead of actually setting a boundary and saying, hey, I'm annoyed or I'm frustrated by this, I really don't have space for you to talk to me about this, you lash back out in a really subtle way by saying something that is cruel and points at the truth of their situation in a way it's going to be hurtful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, what's interesting, I want to hear your perspective on this, but both idiot compassion and this casually cruel in the name of being honest thing, in my head, have the same roots. And it's discomfort with your own emotional state. So you don't want to feel uncomfortable. You don't want to listen to the problem, or you're like resentful, rage, disappointment, pissed off. And you don't want to feel that, so you're putting it back on them. Or you don't want to feel it and you're just going to make it nice so you don't have to deal with it. It's the same thing. It's just two different sides of the same coin.
Right. Yeah. And that's what I was thinking as you were talking about all of these, view and all of these things, kind of this checklist that you could think through. Another way of getting to that same outcome is, what does it feel like in my body right now? What is my emotional state as I'm interacting with this person? And if it doesn't feel like open awareness and love, if it feels like some negative, icky thing, you're not about to be kind to them unless you create a boundary where you say, hey, this is not something I can engage with because I can't hold space for this right now. It's making me feel some sort of way. And so like, I'm really sorry you're going through that, but not me, not right now, not here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
what's your sense of why do we do this? This happens. Why does it happen?
Yeah. Good question. Not my thoughts, but the way that that Chogyam Trungpa talks about it is, we are unaware of ourselves. We are unaware of the person we're in conversation with, and we are unaware of the entirety of the situation. And so, to some degree, it comes down to ignorance. Number one, being unaware of ourselves. I am unaware of how I am reacting in the moment that this person comes to me with some sort of difficult life situation where my response is going to be to provide immediate compassion and Yeslight them. So because I am unaware of what's actually happening for me, I'm not noticing this mechanism that you just mentioned, in which I'm now in a state that I'm uncomfortable with. I don't want to sit in the discomfort of these emotions. I don't want to hold space for whatever story and emotions they're dealing with. And I'm going to try to control the situation to get back to not whatever this is.
Right.
So you say whatever they need to hear to end the conversation as quickly as possible. Yes, he's an asshole. Yes, you were wronged. Yes, you did nothing wrong. Yes, this is terrible. It's an injustice. And then there's no more exploration to be done. You've literally just said yes to whatever they bring to the conversation and reinforced it. Or you've said whatever you think they want to hear or whatever they need to hear to stop talking about this as quickly as possible. And so in doing that, you're not doing it for them. You're doing it to extricate yourself in a way that is potentially something you don't even recognize you're doing, right? You may be doing it as a defense mechanism that you're unconscious of. And so it's really similar to somebody sad and they start to cry and you go, oh, don't cry. But the situation they're in absolutely warrants a good cry, right? It's totally reasonable for them to be crying. But you hate being around somebody who is in the middle of a good cry. And so your reaction is, no, don't do that. Don't do that. You're making me uncomfortable. Stop doing that. Do something else, right?
Yeah.
So while it's not your responsibility to do anything for somebody who comes to you with a difficult story, you are not beholden to them. You don't have to hold space for them. It's definitely not for you to fix it for them. It's their problem. They are more than capable of fixing it themselves. You may be able to help them in understanding how, to come to a solution. It's also not for you to control them in the sense of, well, let's just make your problem go away using some conversational, tactics to get through this conversation as quickly as possible.
I want to add another, why do we do this thing to this?
Yeah.
Do you know about the Enneagram?
Yeah.
At all? Okay. What are you?
Not much. I don't know tons about the Enneagram. I would love to learn more about it. I am a 7 wing 8.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Which goes right in hand with being, with my ADHD.
Yeah. Soaking up life. Having fun.
Yeah.
Doing
And
cool
then
things.
also, being indignant about injustices and having some strong beliefs and stances on, things that I think are important. But yeah. I'm curious, what about you?
I am a 9. I am a card-carrying peacemaker, which I gotta tell you, as soon as I figured that out, probably like 3 or 4 years ago, I was like, oh, I hated it. I hated it. And it also gave me my therapy curriculum for the next 4 years. I was like, I gotta work on a lot of this stuff because idiot compassion feels super familiar to me. As a person, I do this. This is part of being a 9, is when you're not functioning well, you're doing this a lot because you are peacemaking out of a sense of fear and to control, and because it's uncomfortable to think about conflict, to think about bringing something up. And a high functioning 9 can do that, can bring conflict, can bring I don't know, can shake things up in kindness and in peace, and actually in the name of peace long term. And I've worked hard to get there, but I will say that there's the personality characteristics of the peacemaker at play here. But I know for a lot of people, Yeslighting is not just a sort of a organic behavior trait that just appears. It can be a fawn response in trauma. Right? So if we take a trauma lens to this is just somebody saying, the way I survived childhood is to make that other person feel okay. Because when they didn't, I wasn't safe. And that's what I learned how to do. Right. And here we are as adults, making sure that everybody else feels safe, except for you. And so that's a big part of it. So I want to sort of flip it back to you to say both, it's sort of a trauma-informed lens of what this is, what it could be, and also it doesn't have to originate in a trauma behavior. It could just be you haven't really embraced the skills of kindness and conflict at the same time. What advice would you offer to people who notice that this is happening for them to sort of walk back this behavior?
To notice that they are the ones who are giving idiot compassion or who are receiving it?
Oh, which one do you want to answer?
I think the answer might be the same for both, which is boundaries. Where do I stop?
Simple boundaries.
Begin? I just do boundaries. It's fine.
I don't know if you've ever heard of this thing called boundaries. Super useful.
When you remember it, it magically happens. And everything is great.
Amen.
Yeah, no, but
I'll be working on boundaries till I'm 90. Anyway, Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I mean, it is. It's noticing where they end and you begin, and then reacting in a way that is respectful of both, that is considerate of both, right? So, for example, now that you see it, now that you know what idiot compassion is and you have a word for it, my hope would be that you, as somebody who doles it out, can be more aware of when you are doing it. Because it's not just a thing you do automatically that you don't notice yourself doing. It's now a thing you're going to catch yourself in the act of. And when you do, you can stop and take a moment to check in with, do I really want to have this conversation right now?
Yeah.
Am I finding it in myself to want to hold space for this person? Am I finding it in myself is my response here to want to engage and care for them? And if it is, then notice what you're saying in terms of giving them immediate compassion and confirming things you may not be true, and come back to truth. Come back to what is actually true about the situation. One thing that is absolutely and always true is what somebody's lived experience is.
Yeah.
So instead of making it about the situation or the problem or the other person that you may not even know, you also don't have much of you were not there for whatever the conflict was. So you don't have a clear understanding. You just have this person's account of what happened that now has them in emotional turmoil. Ask them about themselves. How are you processing this right now? How is it hitting you? Ask them about, you know, if you have the urge to want to make it better, what could you do about this to make it better? Or where do you go from here?
Yeah.
So you're giving them questions that center on what is true for them now, or what is true for them in terms of how they see it, instead of giving them advice about something you know very little about, or telling them, no, this is how you should feel instead of the way you're feeling now. Another thing you could do, which is often what a lot of people need, is to be asked, like, hey, what do you need? Yeah, like, this really sucks. Like, what would be most helpful for me to do for you right now? Do you want to think through it together? Do you just want to hang out and, like, sit in it a little bit? A simple, man, that really sucks. That's terrible.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's all somebody needs, like some validation of the thing you are going through is really difficult. That sounds really difficult. And then if you really want to get into the details, you could maybe explore different perspective taking. So depending on how it feels and how open they may be to changing their mind about what's happening, ask them, what is a different way of looking at this, possibly from the other person's perspective, to understand the actual truth of what happened instead of the narrative, the very emotionally charged narrative you're carrying right now about the situation. So that's, if you are the one who notices yourself in the act of giving idiot compassion, some things to potentially consider. I think if you're the person who's receiving it and it feels, sometimes you get idiot compassion, it just feels empty, it feels like, it feels like a facade, kind of the first thing that comes to mind is these towns in China where the Chinese government put up facades of buildings, and there's this main strip and it looks really beautiful, but literally all the buildings are just plywood and there's nothing substantial behind the facade of the building. That's kind of what it feels like to get idiot compassion. On the surface of it, it looks like someone's being nice to you, but it's not landing on an emotional level. It doesn't feel like they're actually being nice, and it doesn't feel like they're actually there for you, because they're not. They're trying to manage the situation to make themselves feel better, right?
Yeah.
So if you notice that happening as somebody who is receiving idiot compassion, you could call it out. Be like, hey, that's not like that. I don't, maybe say, I don't know that that's true. And it's definitely not helping me. And then say what you think might actually help you or what you need from them. And maybe they're not able to give it to you. Maybe all they know how to do is give you idiot compassion. Or maybe they become upset because they were uncomfortable. And now they're even more uncomfortable because you've told them that doesn't help. That's okay. But you've set the boundary and you've let them know, like, that kind of behavior doesn't fly. It's not actually doing anything good for me here. And if they become upset, you can always go back and mend the relationship later if it's not a good moment to do it then. But you, again, you set the boundary of, here's what I am willing to do. Here's how I'm willing to interact with you. And what you are doing doesn't fall within that.
I am so glad I know that you are a 7 wing 8 now, because this makes so much sense. Like hearing you be like, you set the boundary and then you can repair later. Makes sense. And if there's anybody out there who's like going, oh my God, no, I can't do that.
Let's hear it.
Which might be fueling the idiot compassion. Like, no, then no one is going to hate me. Everyone's going to like me. I'm not doing that. One of the things I learned is how, okay, and this is both parenting and just relationships, romantic even. When you've got somebody with healthy boundaries who you can push up against and you know that like they are intact because they've got healthy boundaries, you trust that relationship more. You want that relationship more. So like, I'm going to give 2 examples, parenting and then like romantic relationships. Parenting, like these kids are like, they're pushing every limit, every boundary. They tell like, I wish I had a nice mommy, da da da. Like, okay. But I heard that yesterday.
Ouch.
Yeah, please. But they feel so safe when I'm like, no, we're not going to get, spare you the details. It was about gaming and stuff. We're not going to get that thing because that's not safe for your brain. And I'm in charge of your safety right now. I remember this episode from Modern Family that's like hilarious sitcom, where one of the kids walks down and goes, I'm 11. I need boundaries. And just like, if we all came with instructions, like how to love us, how to treat us, we would be saying like, hey, I might be venting right now. I might be just like screaming bloody murder, blaming everything but me, and telling you I want you to like treat me, like comfort me, tell me I'm right. But that's not actually what I need. I need someone to be like, no, how about this? And that's true for kids. And it's true. I remember learning this just like in the relationship context. I mean, if you think about being in a relationship with somebody or like sort of starting to like be attracted to somebody, flirting with somebody, and they just sort of yes you to death. And they're like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, that sounds awful. Like,
So
it's so boring. It is so weak.
Yeah.
It is so uninteresting. And it's like, what a dead fish. Ugh.
Yeah.
But when you got somebody who's like, I don't actually can push back in a kind way, like, okay, there's something here. There's something real, alive, healthy, and authentic here because you are your own person. People love that. If anybody is struggling with the like, everybody has to love me. There's a beautiful kind of love that's on the other side of individuation and healthy boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the thing I said in terms of if they become even more upset, I could see somebody who is more out of touch with their emotions than the average person who is trying to light you to move on from the conversation as quickly as possible because they know they feel that they're having an uncomfortable emotional state, but they don't understand how or why it's happening, and they might not even be directly aware of the fact that they are feeling emotionally uncomfortable. They just know this doesn't feel good. I'm going to get away from it, and here's my defense mechanism for how I do that. Were you to give them that boundary of here's what you want to do, but no, here's what we're going to do instead. Here's how it's going to look, or here's how I'm going to stand up for myself. Here's how I push back and act as my own person. That could potentially serve to further upset them. And if they don't know how to deal with the upset, then you may just not have a good productive conversation right at that point in time. Right? And that in and of itself is also healthy boundaries, understanding, okay, I want to repair. I want to stand up for myself. I want to build a healthy relationship dynamic here, right now, in this moment. But it takes 2 people to do that. And so if that repair and reconciliation, if that seeing one another and understanding one another isn't available to you in that moment because they are so emotionally out of touch and uncomfortable, you may need to come back to it later, right? But if that relationship is important enough for you to do that, it's something to keep in mind. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Anything I haven't asked you about ADHD compassion that you want to share?
Yeah. I think the last thing, so we kind of already talked about this. There are three ways in which we're unaware in idiot compassion. You're unaware of yourself and the reaction you're having when somebody comes to you. We've been talking around this a lot, haven't called it out directly. You're unaware of the person you are giving idiot compassion to. You are so caught up in the act of let's manage this that you are not thinking through to them. What do they need? What is true for them? What would be most helpful for them to process this? You're not seeing them in their discomfort. You are seeing them as part of the situation you need to control for yourself. And so that's a second thing that could lead to, it's part of the unawareness or the ignorance that comes with being in, in a state of giving idiot compassion. And the third is you're informed about the situation. You believe whatever narrative they are bringing you, and you reinforce it, quite likely not having all the facts about what objectively happened.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you just validate it, there's a difference between validating somebody's emotions and their experience of how something happened and saying that that is objectively true and objectively what happened when it happened. And it's a nuanced thing to draw that distinction, but it's a really important thing because once again, you have the opportunity of acting as a mirror for this person. And if you just mirror back to them whatever they are already carrying around, you don't give them the gift of a different perspective or of questioning their assumptions or understanding what limiting beliefs they're carrying that are feeding into the way that they already see the thing. So in that sense, having some attention on what if we'd had a video camera and we had recorded the event that has now set this person in this really, difficult place, what would we see in that recording? Keeping that in mind, and then realizing that it's likely different from whatever telling of the situation they bring to the table.
Yeah.
So a quote that is in the ballpark of, be aware of the fact that objective reality might not match what this person is saying happened, is real compassion is uncompromising in its allegiance to basic sanity. And so if it feels a little crazy, if the charge of the conversation feels a little like, are we in a comfortable, sane place right now, or are we worked up? That's a really great reminder to think about, okay, what would it look like to look at this with a level head and an eye for what is objectively true.
Ooh, that's a nice quote to end on. Ooh. If it is not feeling a little crazy. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Can you say it one more time just so we memorialize it? Yeah.
Yeah. The quote is, real compassion is uncompromising in its allegiance to basic sanity.
Real compassion is uncompromising basic sanity. Yeah. I guess
Help
it also
your friends
assumes
stay sane.
Yeah. It assumes we have a similar definition of sanity, right?
Sure.
But yeah, help your friends stay sane. And that is real compassion.
Yeah.
And it also implies that, you got the boundaries to be able to do that.
Sure. Yeah. And that's really, how I was thinking about putting a bow on this is, the concept of idiot compassion is coming from a Buddhist master, somebody who has devoted their entire life to the work of peace of mind and healthy relationships and understanding how we operate as, why it is that we are as people and how we relate with the world around us. So it's not a thing you just learn and then do perfectly. It's going to be a thing that's going to take your entire lifetime, much like boundaries, to work on and to learn about and to practice when you are presented with a real life opportunity to practice it. So in that sense, don't feel like it's just going to be something that now that you've heard about it, you're going to do perfectly. That's also not basically sane. That is extremely unrealistic. but yeah, notice when you have the opportunity to do this, and then see how that changes over time.
Yeah. And notice what it feels like when it's being done to you, because the other person is probably thinking it's helping you, right? It feels better. This is good for you. But
Yeah.
when it's happening, do you really like, the part of you knows the truth, right? When this is happening, you're like,
Yeah.
and it feels gross.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's helped me too a lot in being able to step away from this pattern of like, I think I'm being kind. I think this, I am making them feel better. And it is like a sugar high. It is so temporary and it crashes. Yeah. Cool. Lovely as always to talk to you. You bring brilliant insights to me, and I'm grateful. This was fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Great questions. I'm actually really excited to flip the table, and
Yeah, me too.
or I guess the saying is flip the tables, as if we were sitting at multiple tables having this. I guess we are, because we're in different rooms, but yeah, to have you be the one to bring a topic to conversation the next time we connect, and I'm going to get curious and excited about whatever you have to share.
This was great. Thanks, friend. Have a good night.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.